What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everybody to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I am James Haskell, as always, with my co-host Glenn Martin and new friend and face of the show, Jake Ellenbogan. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Absolutely, and we are as well as our newest resident Rams expert content creator for Downtown Rams. Make sure you guys check their stuff out. But Jake, I got to start at under center. There's a shift off of Jared Goff towards one Matthew Stafford. What has the acceptance been at Matthew Stafford, and how are your feelings thus far with him coming in under center in comparison to Jared Goff?
Well, I'm going to be real with you. I wanted him 5 years ago. So I was a kid in a candy store when the Rams decided to go out and get this guy. I thought it made more sense to go out and get him instead of, drafting Jared Goff, albeit I was a huge Carson Wentz fan. I still would have traded the pick for Stafford. He is just such an incredible player. He is able to make so many things work off schedule. If things go awry, he can still, with his underrated pocket mobility. He's not a running quarterback, but he can still make things work. You talk about his arm talent, the fact the Rams lead the league in, most 50+ yard plays, the fact that, he's going to be the first quarterback potentially to ever throw for, to a 2,000-yard receiver. And the second quarterback, the first quarterback to throw for two different guys to break the receiving yards record, primarily Calvin Johnson and now potentially Cooper Kupp. So, this guy, there's a reason for it. He's a gunslinger. He makes mistakes at times. He does turn the ball over. He's very similar to Brett Favre in that aspect. But, to keep everything open with him, whereas opposed with Jared Goff, teams last year were begging Jared Goff to throw downfield and we're throwing 9-10 guys in the box. This year, it's kind of opened things up. And, I still don't think this offense is anywhere near where it can be. And I think that's the big thing there. It's not anywhere near where it can be or where it should be. But you have to feel good going into the playoffs. The way they've started to establish the run, they were 24th in the run game the whole year, seemingly. Sean McVay, big reason for that because, he would stop running the football, but he's starting to see, okay, Stafford has some limitations and, having him throw 40, 50 times a game is just not conducive to winning football. So when you have him in a balanced passing attack with, an offense that can run the football, they become a wicked scary team.
Mm.
Yeah, no doubt. They certainly have talent pretty much everywhere on the field. I quickly want to ask you about more of a general question about the Rams and their overall strategy. What are your thoughts on the fact that they've kind of a unique strategy, pretty opposite of what the Ravens like to do. And the Ravens like to accumulate as many draft picks as possible to hopefully, increase their chances on hitting on those draft picks, which we all know can be a bit of a guessing game at some points. So what are your thoughts on the strategy with the Rams trading away a lot of their high picks over the next few years to win now? Do you think that's a good strategy both now and a sustainable strategy?
It wouldn't be just for any team, but this team, found guys like Corey Littleton in UDFA. We're talking about Alaric Jackson last week, starting at left tackle. Andrew Whitworth and Joseph Noteboom were on IR, so for COVID, so he actually had to step up when there was an injury. And I just got done watching that film again, and he's very impressive as a UDFA out of Iowa. If the Rams couldn't find guys the way they find them, Ernest Jones in the 3rd round, Ben Skoranek in the 7th, who's had to fill in as sometimes the wide receiver 3, then I'd be a little concerned. But the Rams do this right, and when you look at it, it amounted to, getting to the Super Bowl. And, arguably if they had Stafford, then they probably would have won it. But, now they have that piece and they feel good. They go out and they get Jalen Ramsey. I liked Kayvon Chason, and I'm a big draft nut. Have about, a big board of at least 300 players every single season. But the fact of the matter is this: even as much as I love the draft is a crapshoot at the end of the day. There are guys that do work out, and there are guys that don't. We saw the Browns, like with Sashi Brown, overrating the fact that they had like 17 picks that one year and they didn't hit on any of them. But when you're the Ravens, though, a team that can draft, a team that's smart enough to realize, oh, Lamar Jackson is still there at 32, could get the 5th-year option if we trade up and go get him. Okay, let's do it. A team that's smart enough to pick up on a guy, like Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison. We're talking about even like a Devin Duvernay that can, really take the top off defenses. Marquise Brown, just speed that's not in every single receiver room. Getting guys like that and Mark Andrews in the 3rd round. And those are really good picks. And so, this is a team that it makes sense for them. And the Rams in the past have drafted well. They did draft Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round. But, they have also not. They've had moments where, Sean McVay kind of, from what I was told, got the go ahead to make the first pick of, his era. And he chose Gerald Everett. And look, I like Everett. I met Everett. Good dude. But Everett was not a 2nd-round pick then, and he's not a 2nd-round pick now. They passed on George Kittle. They passed on Chris Godwin. I was absolutely furious when that happened, but they did end up getting a guy that could potentially break the record in Cooper Kupp in the 3rd. But when you look at just how they accumulate, draft picks as well, because people forget about this, they have a method to their madness. So yes, they might trade away a 1st-round pick or 2 1st-round picks or 2nd or 3rd or whatever, but they're also getting compensatory picks. With the minority coaching hire, they got 2 3rd-round picks, one of which they will have this year that a lot of people forget because they lost Brad Holmes, who was the 3rd in command. He's now the GM in Detroit. So because of that, they get a 3rd-round pick this year, and they had one last year. You look at, Raheem Morris, who, is a minority candidate as well. If he becomes a head coach, he's their defensive coordinator, they'd get another 3rd-round pick. But that's new. They've been doing the compensatory picks with players for a while. You talk about, letting guys like John Johnson go. Why on earth would you let a guy like that go? Because you've built it up with, Taylor Rapp and Terrell Burgess, Nick Scott draft picks. So they've figured out a way to find talent in all different aspects of the draft, going out and getting Greg Gaines in the 4th round. He's one of the best nose guards in the league right now. And he just filled in for a 7th-round pick in Sebastian Joseph Day, who hit. So if you don't hit on these players late in the game, then you have to make risks. But the thing that the Rams are doing so well is they're getting the Jalen Ramseys and Von Millers of the world, and they're hitting on those picks, which is allowing them to basically just, be up here and consistently be up here. It's allowed Sean McVay to be, a 4-time playoff appearing coach in the last 5 years.
Yeah, man, it's definitely when you go down that list, like Glenn was saying, and just as you explained, there's definitely a ton of talent, ton of names. Feels like a team that you created on Madden in a lot of ways.
Really does.
It's just incredible. But talk to us, because a lot of folks here that watch the show are up to date on the Ravens, not as up to date on the Rams. So the Rams clinched this past week, unless I'm incorrect, as far as a playoff berth. Mm-hmm. What are they playing for? What's still at stake for them coming into this game? Because everything is at stake for the Ravens, right? We're on life support. So what's at stake for the Rams in this game?
Yeah, a lot. They still have to win the division, in my opinion. You don't want to be playing on the road in the 1st round. Right now, you don't want any sort of chance to ruin the momentum you've built. You've won 4 straight after losing 3 straight. People called you a fraud, and then you turn, the Cardinals into frauds essentially overnight. So, they're still in the picture, and I can't stress that enough. The Cardinals are not done. Just because the Rams beat them, just because they showed heart and all those guys that were on the COVID list and out and all that, and they won, does not mean the Cardinals are done. We've seen this before. Teams lost. Look at Tampa last year, lose to the Rams at home. They lost back-to-back games, the Rams and Chiefs. The Rams didn't even get to the NFC title game, and they beat the Chiefs, embarrassingly in the Super Bowl. So never count teams out, but that would be the same thing to be said with the Rams. And now, being as they're in the number 3 seed, because unfortunately, Dallas has a really easy schedule, and they have the tiebreaker because of it. You talk about playing that easy division and having 6 gimme wins. That's going to add to your conference record, and so they have the best conference record. Therefore, they have the tiebreaker over not only the Rams, but they also have the tiebreaker over Tampa as well. So the Rams could still get the 1 seed, but they would need the Packers to drop Sunday Night Football against the Vikings, and they'd have to lose against the Lions, which I think is kind of possible in a weird way, because I could see the Vikings being, as desperate as, say, the Ravens this week, and why I'm not looking past them. Desperate teams are scary. It's kind of all or nothing. It's throwing it all on the line. And, this is a Ravens team I don't think people give enough credit to. They've had so many injuries, a myriad of injuries. One of my favorite players in the league went down, and Marlon Humphrey, dude had, 8 forced fumbles last year. Just one of the best DBs that I've seen in quite some time. But yet you talk about him and Peters, and, you've had to have guys step up that just simply weren't built to be playing right now. But that's what it takes. And, they lost by 1 to the Packers. They lost, in embarrassing fashion, sure, to the Bengals. But, I mean, come on, that was ridiculous. That they were just beating a dead horse at that point. Yeah, they were just beating a dead horse at that point. If Lamar plays, or even Tyler Huntley, it's a different story. And so, I am aware of that, and I don't think that the Ravens are a team to be overlooked. And luckily, the Rams aren't a team that's going to overlook them. Sean McVay is very adamant that this is a really good Ravens team. They believe that this is going to be a tough game. And Sean McVay, a lot of people are complaining about the 1:00 game. I think mainly the Rams fans in LA. I'm in upstate New York, so I'm not complaining. I like my 1:00 games more. Rams also do. They're 10-2 in 1:00 outings. So they are playing for a division clincher. If they win and the Cardinals lose to the Cowboys, they would clinch the NFC West. And they didn't even win it last year. People forget about that. They just made Seattle look embarrassing. But, they didn't win it. They have a chance to clinch it this week, but it's almost better in case of seeding, because the Rams could still get the 2 seed if the Dallas Cowboys drop 1 of 2 games moving forward. So it's almost like you'd root for Arizona to win, to knock off the Cowboys in a weird way. And then the Rams take over the 2 seed, and then they just have to beat the Niners, and then they have the 2 seed. And if somehow the Packers lose out, then they have the 1 seed. But I saw the Ravens still have a shot to make the playoffs. They're on life support, sure. But not everybody in the AFC, they've kind of beaten the crap out of each other. The Steelers are not a guarantee. The Browns sure as hell aren't a guarantee. The Chargers are falling apart. The Miami Dolphins, yeah, they've won 7 straight, but now they have to play the Patriots, and they have to play the Titans. It's not going to be easy for those teams. The Colts as well. Now the potential, maybe Carson Wentz doesn't play. So this is wide open for the Ravens, and this is why it's a team that just refuse, to look past, because, the last time this is a team that everyone was looking, all Rams fans in 2019 were just kind of, being a little delusional, and they were like, oh, they're coming in the Coliseum, and, this is a Rams team that's starting to falter. So they're going to beat the Ravens and find their stride. And sure enough, they got absolutely obliterated. One of the best single performances I've ever seen, most dominant, from Lamar Jackson, the Jackson 5, as they called it on the broadcast, 5 touchdowns. But, you can't ever look past a team that has guys like that. And Lamar could play. I'm really tired of hearing, certain Rams fans out there say, well, Lamar's not going to play. We don't know that. Plus, I'd rather get the Ravens at their, even strength as much as they are, than have any excuses as to why the Rams won. That's just me.
I got you. Now, you touched briefly on the next question I have, and that's about the travel. Man, if you look at the history, when a team has to travel and make that huge West Coast to East Coast trip and play a 1:00 game, which is 10:00 their time, there is a bit of a disadvantage. But the only parallel I can bring is when they took on the Giants earlier in the season, and they destroyed the Giants. So is there any, if you're talking to a Ravens fan, is there any disadvantage for the Rams having to make that travel and play at such an early time?
No, because the way Sean McVay has these guys ready throughout his tenure with the Rams, going back to 2017, like I mentioned, they're 10-2 or 12-2. I think they're 10-2, 10-2 in those games. And McVay mentioned it on a show last night. He said, look, we were actually happy with the 1:00 thing. We like those games. We don't like to go out there and play a 4:00 game, because it's like, why are we even traveling at that point? They like the 1:00. They feel like the guys are more alert in the morning. It's 10 a.m. their time, and they feel like that's the best time, and guys are ready. You look at, their biggest wins against the Texans, the Jaguars, and, of course, the Giants, all 1:00 games. They eviscerated all 3 of them. So the Ravens are a way better team than all 3 of those. That's not what I'm saying. But, I don't have any concern about that. I don't really even look at the travel under Sean McVay, because this is a guy that used to go to London and just, figure it out, and they would win games in London. So I'm not too worried about, travel in that aspect.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think that a lot of Ravens fans are taking hope, myself included, that there could be some sort of advantage here in the travel and the early time. So it will be interesting to see. But the other question I have to ask you is around the weapons that Matthew Stafford has. Having, of course, you talked about Cooper Kupp, but OBJ seems to be coming on and integrating himself into this offense. The Ravens are familiar with Odell Beckham Jr., having played in the division for a few years here for Cleveland. What has that been like as far as him integrating himself into the team, and what sort of value has he brought to that wide receiver room and the team as a whole?
He's invaluable, man. He's another one of those guys I've wanted for 5 years. He just, McVay wanted him from the get-go. I mean, this is a guy he's always wanted to coach. And when he became available, the Rams, they waited until the end, but they made a play. Ramsey kind of was at the forefront of it. And then, he asked receivers straight up, asked, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson for their blessing. And they were like, come on board, we're going to win a Super Bowl with you. And that was what did it. But OBJ, as much of a cancer as I've heard he is, he's caught 4 touchdowns in 6 games. He's been, a model of consistency in the fact that if he's not, scoring touchdowns, he's helping out in the blocking game. He's helping out as far as opening up opportunities for Van over the top or Cooper Kupp over the middle. He's just been so valuable, and he's had way more opportunities where, Stafford at times has just missed him. And, and part of that is because the Rams, people forget, just haven't practiced much. I mean, they've been through so much with the COVID instance, as of recent. And then you talk about getting Von Miller and OBJ right before that happens. They've only had a few weeks of practice, if even.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a ton that has been integrated yet. And that's why, for the most part, Van Jefferson's really started, with Kupp, but they're using OBJ quite a bit, and he's starting to become, a big time factor. And so when I look at him and just what he brings, not only on the field, but off it as a leader, and how he's just energized. I'm just going to say this right now. It's not a huge deal, but this team never celebrated like the way they do. Like OBJ is injected like this like new type of energy into this team that I've never seen. So, I mean, he's good for the sideline. He's good for the locker room. And he's been a huge help. So
now all those good things. It helps when you're winning. Let's see how Odell Beckham's doing if you catch a 3-game slide like earlier in the year. Maybe those antics turn negative and they're not so good for the locker room, because we've certainly seen that before at his previous stops. But so far, so good. But let me ask you about that 3-game losing streak, because I got to know what happened during that stint there, because there was a couple blowouts in that group there. I mean, you look at the Niners game, 31-10. What happened in that 3-game stretch, and is there anything the Ravens can look to in that stretch and try and replicate?
Well, yeah, I think I noticed when Stafford first started really, because the Cardinals game earlier in the year, that was a fluke loss. If you go back and you watch, they had a fumble in their own, area, and they had a fluke interception, and it just wasn't like the Rams stopped running the ball. Like they had that game, like they were in that game. To lose by 17, that was a fluke. But the Niners game, the Rams actually didn't do a bad job defending the run, as much as people want to laugh at them because they ran like 50 times. The Rams still defended the run. They only averaged 3.7 yards per carry in that game. What it comes down to is, for whatever reason, the Niners have been the monkey on the Rams' back, and mainly Sean McVay's. They beat the Niners back with Fisher, but for whatever reason, Kyle Shanahan has had Sean McVay's number, and that is not anything that we can just deny. So it's been a big crutch for them, and they have not been able to get over it, especially when Jimmy Garoppolo plays. And so the last 5 meetings, they're 0-5. That game, it didn't matter. We found out it really wasn't just Jared Goff. It might be just Sean McVay just not getting ready for those games. And, there were moments where they had a chance and they blew it. And we talk about the moments where things just start to unravel and snowball. And going for it, instead of kicking the field goal and going for that fake field goal pass just really ruined the game, I think, going in the half. But, looking at that and what the Ravens can do, I started to notice Matthew Stafford struggling when teams stopped blitzing. Matthew Stafford has the best stats all season against the blitz. Okay, he will annihilate you if you try that. But when they stopped blitzing and they just brought three, and very, mid pressure, but still got through, that's when Stafford started to struggle because there's so many guys all over the secondary and coverage, and it's hard to read the field. And Stafford can read it. He's as good as anybody. But when you have all those guys, and he's already thrown a pick, it's in his head like, I can't make that decision because I already did, and it resulted in that. So you had that combination against the Titans, and really what they were able to do up front, with Autry and Harold Landry was huge in that game for them, and Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, when you get that interior rush, it just really opens up anything for you. You don't have to blitz there. You can have more guys in the back end. And that's really what worked. And even still, I thought the Rams had a chance, and Matthew Stafford, somebody that rallied back. And, you look at the fourth quarter, he's one of the best fourth quarter quarterbacks in the NFL, hasn't thrown an interception, thrown 10 touchdowns, and has like a passer rating over 120. But what it comes down to is if he starts slow and it's bad enough where even the defense isn't playing well, you can beat this team. And right now, I don't really think so. I'm not looking past the Ravens, but I don't think that they're going to get into that realm because they've been running with Sony Michel so much, and they're going to have Cam Akers back, whether it's this weekend or next. I think they're about to go on a run, but I'm not looking past the Ravens, and they do have the weapons where, they have the equalizers. You talk about a Rashad Bateman. This is a team that, might play a little, soft zone and will try to keep you, yeah, you can have the ball and the time possession and all that, but we just don't want to give up the big play. Sure enough, they've given up some big plays this year. So I could see a Bateman big play or, a Duvernay or a Brown or even, Andrews. And those are the equalizers there. If you can do that against this Rams team, this defense have you while they're playing unbelievable right now. And then, turn around and on offense, you're not blitzing Stafford and you're forcing him into turnovers and things like that. That's how you beat this team.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because certainly the Ravens have had to change some of their defensive tactics as players have gone down and personnel has been injected into the offense off of their other jobs because, we at this point have the all free agent team on defense. But however, with that said, our defensive front and linebacker, well, it's a group effort, but really we've done a good job at stopping the run. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're still first. If not, we're certainly in the top 5.
Which is encouraging because I think the Rams, that's where you got to start. You got to stop the run.
That's what I was going to mention. Yep. No, 100%. And so just like you said with Sony Michel and them running the ball so well, it's certainly, I'm looking for anything, within your mentions that I can, grasp to help the Ravens. But, you kind of mentioned things that they need to do to get this win. What is it that the Rams need to do? If you had to name one or two things that they need to execute on to come into M&T Bank Stadium, get a win and fly back home, what are the one or two things you've identified?
Yeah, well, you want to have a balanced, passing and rushing game. I mean, you don't want to go too pass happy. You don't want Stafford throwing 50 times in this game. You want to be able to manage it, control it the way you did in Minnesota, win in, despite the fact he threw the ball, 3 interceptions. You want to be able to do that. And you don't want to run Cam Akers in the ground. Like if he plays, I don't want to see him getting 20 carries, but Sony Michel can take 25 and you can give Cam 5. And that's fine. And then have, Stafford thrown 35 times. That's winning football right there if you can manage that. Now, if the Ravens, and I caution you, if the Ravens want to stop the run and they want to sell out to do it, just go back and watch Arizona. They had no idea that the Rams were going to come out in 12 and 13 personnel groupings. They punched them right in the mouth. And then coming out in the second half, Arizona's like, oh, we should stop the run. And so they sold out to stop the run. It opened up Cooper Kupp having the game he did. And, OBJ and Van Jefferson doing what they did. So it's really a pick your poison when this team decides to dictate the game and control the game and have a balanced attack because the Rams can adjust. And, I know Sean McVay, he's saying, he really is confident and believes that this Ravens team is a tough team. And I believe they are. But Last week, make no mistake, he's going to look at what, T. Higgins did and think, all right, well, if this team tries to double or triple or bracket, Cooper, then we're going to have Odell or Van, and keep this in mind, guys. They didn't have Tyler Higbee during those games. They were running 12 personnel grouping with guys that essentially were on the practice squad all season at tight end. And they were using, sixth offensive linemen. They have Tyler Higbee now. And I can tell you right now, the offense is night and day when Higbee plays. He has turned into a stellar blocker, and he could still, he's had games where he's exploded. He had 3 touchdowns against the Eagles early last year before he got hurt. And this is a guy that can, with his ability, they called him Baby Gronk for a reason. He's built like that to withstand all the hits over the middle, run those seam busters. But they've just asked him to take such a step back that I wouldn't be surprised if he just happens to go off in this game the way the tight ends have this year, namely going back to, the first time the Bengals played CJ Uzama.
Yeah, no doubt. That's how many guys are we going to call Baby Gronk, by the way? I mean,
I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it.
A little bit.
I'm really tired of it. Like,
can we call him toddler Gronks? Can we add some variation to? Is this preteen, prepubescent Gronk? Like, you know what I mean?
It's funny because I had to say it because the first ever time I ever heard Baby Gronk was Higbee coming out of Western Kentucky. People were calling him that. He came out 2016 was the draft. So he was the first, but now all of a sudden it's Gesicki, it's Hawk, Pat. He's not Gronk. Like, he's his own guy. You have to understand Gronkowski's big. Like Higbee's 6'6". He's like 250, 260. Like that.
Might as well call Andrews Gronk. I mean, he's 6'6", 270, or pure muscle. I mean, the guy doesn't have a drop of fat on him. It's hard to believe at that size.
The problem with Andrews, though, he's amazing as a receiver, but he doesn't block the way Gronk does. And I don't even think
nobody blocks the way Gronk does, but he's pretty damn good.
Kittle
I mean,
Kittle. Kittle's the best blocking tight end I've ever seen.
You're talking about two guys that can play tackle if they wanted to, but Andrews is underrated in that regard. I don't think he quite gets the respect he deserves.
And I think
he's
improved. I certainly don't think he was too interested in it coming into the league.
Yeah, in Oklahoma, I mean, you run up the seam. That's what you do at Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, they have that all-star, everybody is McDonald's, or I don't know if they would do that for football, but the top 300 guys, and they have all these 5-star recruits, left guard, left tackle, center, right guard, right tackle. Like, they don't need to have an extra tight end to come in and block.
Well, they might this year.
They will probably. But
Lincoln Riley took all the recruits.
Go back and watch. And this always cracked me up. This is kind of related to the Rams, is that, and I don't have any issue with him, but you go back and when people like Sam Bradford is like a can't miss prospect and he has pinpoint accuracy, and you're like, no one is even pressuring this guy. Right. He's throwing in pockets that are like, literally, it is the freaking like Fort Knox. And, it's just, it's total. Like, that's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I mean, you have tight ends at Oklahoma, like, even that Garrett or Calcutta or whatever. I forget. Yeah, I forget his long name. He did come back. But they have those guys that just simply just run seam busters down the field the whole game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's pretty easy. All right, so give us your prediction. What's the score? What happens? Do the Ravens fans leave disappointed?
Yeah, I would say so.
Dang it, Jake.
It's been a tough year for Baltimore. I follow this team a lot. Lamar is my favorite non-Ram player in the league, so nice. I always root for him. And the slander he gets is just absurd. But I think next year this team is going to be really good, and I don't think people are ready to admit that. J.K. Dobbins will be back. Hell, I think Gus Edwards was going to be top 5 in rushing this year if he got a chance to start. But, it's just not in the cards this year. When Ronnie Stanley went down a second time, right after you traded Orlando Brown for him, throwing a fit for no reason, it just was really upsetting to watch, to watch this team kind of fall apart, before the season. I mean, you're talking about Marcus Peters, again, when Marlon Humphrey went down, I mean, everyone's going to, clown John Harbaugh for going for 2, but it's like, I get his point. It's like, we have gotten to the point, we've battled hard. And we have a chance to win this game without going to overtime. I don't trust this team in overtime because I don't even know half these players, like from, earlier in the season. These are
Right.
new guys. So the good thing about this, and I've seen with the Rams, is that you find out who actually is depth. Depth is just a saying, depth is just a title until you finally see who can play. So I do think the Ravens next year will bounce back, but unfortunately, I think their season comes to an end in this game. They have a chance, obviously, I think they need a bunch of teams to lose and all that, but very unlikely. I do think that the Ravens are going to lose this game. I'm going to go with the Rams 31-21. I think the Ravens score some points. The Rams defense has been playing very well, so it's even hard for me to put points on the board. But there's going to be probably a turnover or something where, okay, 21-31, whatever. But regardless of who plays the quarterback position, I do think the Rams win. I think if Lamar plays, assuming he's, healthy to go and he's not like, limping, and so to speak, it'll be an interesting game. Could get down to the wire.
Yeah. Well, if you do a quick search and see what Lamar looked like at practice today, it's not looking too promising. There is a noticeable limp. So you might be right. It might be next year, but look, next year getting an all-star squad back next year off that damn IR list.
No, you're not kidding. But this is another year for guys to go through adversity. Talk about Odafe away, and Patrick Queen and Malik Harris, like these guys that they drafted that played through all of these bumps and bruises. It's gonna benefit them long term, and I like the direction they're going in. It was a tough, ask, losing a guy like Ozzie Newsome retiring, right? And then, you get Eric DaCosta in there who, like, he knows his stuff. I mean, DaCosta is going to be good. I mean, I really think this Ravens team, they're going to dominate, I think, the division next year, assuming, I don't think it's realistic to assume the Bengals are, going to, only go up from here. I think that they've had some moments, but you have to keep in mind they had the last place schedule. So next year it's going to be tougher for them, which I don't think people are mentioning. And we've seen that. I mean, we've seen teams that, this team killed it, and then they get a first place schedule. Like, I don't think the Bengals want a first place schedule next year, because that could be brutal. But no, this Ravens team is 100% my pick next year to win that division. And they're going to be, pretty tough out in the playoffs as long as guys stay healthy. But yeah, you're right. All-star team comes back, and they're gonna be out for blood. They're not gonna be happy going into next year. I wouldn't want to play the Ravens personally. Glad we're doing it this year.
Yeah, they're keeping receipts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, don't they play next year anyway? Because this is the additional game.
I think they do. So we'll be talking again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I wouldn't want to play next year. Oh crap, I want to play next year.
Well, listen, we appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. Why don't you let everyone know where they can follow you, find the stuff that you're working on, things like that.
Yeah, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Glenn, James, nice meeting you guys and talking with you guys. We could probably talk for hours, so good that we're stopping now. But yeah, you can follow me at JK Bogan, and that's where all my stuff is. I have my Linktree link in the description, so if you guys want to check that out in my bio, go ahead, click that. I have all sorts of stuff. I have content creator courses that I've made. I have a YouTube channel. I write for the Game Day and Downtown Rams, my company. So, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great one, man. Talk to you soon.
Good luck in the playoffs.